Hello, this lesson will provide you with some tips on combining project files. This can be useful for a few different circumstances. For example, one might be that you built a project and you forgot all about leaving space in the beginning for a fade in, an intro title, your studio logo. Another example would be, let's say that you had a project where you ended up needing to build two different scenes or segments, an Act 1 and an Act 2 in separate files, but then you want to combine them into one. Let's look at the three project files that I have open right now. One of them is an intro with a title that fades in and out. And then this fades to clear, but you can't tell right now because there's no scene that follows behind it. The second example is a scene where we're using layer depth and panning across using the camera. And you've seen this kind of thing before, of course. And the third example is another scene, something that you'll see that I've provided another lesson for. And this scene also pans, but it's a looping scene and it doesn't use any camera. All right, this is just layers that are being moved with layer translation. So let's say that I want to put all three of these into a new blank file. There are just a couple of things you need to know. One is that it's easiest if you take everything in each of the project files and put them into a folder, right? Put them into a group. So everything for this intro is inside this folder. And then scene one, I've got a lot going on, lots of layers and sublayers, and it's all in a folder as well. Same thing, of course, with scene two. So the first one's easy enough, right? I know that the intro scene needs to go in the beginning of a new blank file. Fine, so I'll start File New, and then use the File, Import, Moho Object. And here's the Moho project file. Click that and click Open. Of course, I get the Insert Object dialog box, and I click OK. So into my new blank file is that little intro. Now I'm going to go back to frame 0. And I'll use that same method to import scene 1. And since I put everything into a folder, I get this nice little package. So I only have one thing to click on. Click OK. And then finally I'll do the third, which is scene 2. Obviously, same thing. I put everything into a folder, so I only have one thing I need to click on, and click OK. Now here's one of the reasons why putting everything into a folder is important. Obviously, scene 2 needs to follow scene 1, and by clicking on the sequencer tab down here on the timeline, then I can just slide that entire folder, that package, over to wherever it is that I need to start scene 2. And remember, if you ever need to make any kind of modifications on the layers, that the bar at the beginning of the package, so to speak, is sort of the new frame 0 for that entire group, for everything in that folder. And here's something else that you need to know. Any camera actions that you already had set up in a Moho project, they don't come over. They won't import with. Okay, you have to copy and paste the keyframes for camera actions. Let's say, for example, that scene 1 is going to start right around frame 96. And, well, it would actually be a lot longer. In reality, it would probably be about 500 frames for each, but just for now, I'll have it so that scene 2 starts at around 2:30, and scene 1 is over here at 96. So clicking back on scene 1 and then clicking over on the Channels tab, we'll see that no camera effects came with the package that we brought in. But if I go back to my original Scene 1 file, there are some camera effects, okay? So if you are importing a scene into a blank file that had camera effects originally, you need to copy the camera effects keyframes and bring them into the new file. Be sure that you catch all of them. You may need to zoom way out on your project, and then you would just select all the keyframes and do an edit, copy, and then into the new file, just paste. And they will paste in exactly the same place that they were in the original file. So let's quickly look at what I would need to do in order to get this shaped up. For one thing, over here in my layers palette, I don't have anything in the correct order. Intro needs to go on the top of the stack, and Scene 2 needs to go below Scene 1. And then I'll need to move my camera keyframes over. So in the beginning here, let me slide across the timeline. So in the beginning, obviously, I've got the intro, and that just looked real weird, right? It looked real weird because the camera keyframes need to be moved over to the start of Scene 1. And I'm starting Scene 1 at 96. So I'm selecting all the camera keyframes, and I'll drag them over to start at frame 96. All right, so let's have a look at this now. All right, so that's already looking a little bit better there. Now, I also know that I need to start my Scene 2 where my Scene 1 ends here with the camera actions, or I need to change where my camera actions are ending at Scene 1. So let's just leave it, and 576 is where I'm going to have to get things straightened out for Scene 2. So I'm going to actually just click one frame past that for the moment, and on Scene 1, I need to hide that entire package. Okay, and the reason why you're not seeing Scene 2 yet is because it was being affected by that camera. So I need to get that straightened out too. So let's, let me click on Scene 2 here for a moment. And then I'm going to go over here to, let's see, which camera? It was the track camera. So clicking on track camera, and I'll click reset. Okay. So now Scene 2 isn't going to be affected by the camera anymore because I've reset the camera actions just following the end of that first scene. Okay. So this can just take a little bit of figuring out on your part. If you need to combine some scenes together into a new blank file, get in touch with me if you have any questions.